Okay, all right. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. We don't have a psalm this week, so we are just going to get right into it. We're going to be looking at Genesis, actually Genesis 12 and 13. We'll be looking at. Let me pull that up so we can go through it a little bit. Let's see, what do I want to do here? Pull this up over here. Let me see here. I think we can probably, hold on a sec. Can probably we could probably read just the whole chapter there. Let me get this a little bigger.
I thought it was like.
Can you see that?
Oh yeah, that's where yeah.
Okay, can you read that? Nice and loud.
Yep. And Yahweh said to Abraham, or Abram, go yourself out of your land, from your relatives, and from your father's house, to a land which I show you. And I shall make you a great nation, and bless you, and make your great name, and you shall be a blessing. And I shall bless those who bless you, and curse him who curses you. But in you, all the clans of the earth shall be blessed. So Abram left, as Yahweh had commanded him. And Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old, and he set out of Haran. Abram took Sarah, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their possessions that they had gathered, and the beings whom they had acquired there. They set out to the land of Canaan, and they came to the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land to the place of Shechem, as far as the timber tree of Moreh, at the time of the Canaanites were in the land. Yahweh appeared to Abram and said, and Yahweh, what did I say? I thought I said, okay. I thought I messed up. All right. And Yahweh appeared to Abram and said, to your seed I give this land. And he built there a slaughter place for Yahweh, who had appeared to him. And from there he moved to the mountain east. He had left Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west of Ai, on the east. And he built there a slaughter place of Yahweh, and called it the name of Yahweh. Abram set out continually toward the south.
Let's just stop right there. We're going to stop right there. We'll deal with some of these things we find in these 9 verses here before we go any further. You want to just deal with one thing at a time. If we go all the way back up, to verse 1, where it says, and Yahweh said to Abram, go yourself out of your land, from your relatives and from your father's house, to a land which I show you. We look at what happened over here with Abraham, with Avram at the time. He hasn't become Abraham yet. We see the perfect example of faith. We see over here the perfect example of faith because we see that the Most High says to Avram, I'm not telling you exactly where you're going, but just start moving. Just start going out to this land that I'm not telling you which land it is right now. You just get up from your people, you leave from your relatives and your family and your country and go. That's called faith right there, right? Usually, you know, if we go, like we just went on a trip, like we set up the trip like months in advance. We knew where we was going. We knew where we were staying at. We paid for the thing in advance. You know, we had all of our plans set out. You know, we got a trip coming up. We're gonna be gone for a week. We know we're gonna be doing each day, planned out ahead of time. Here, the Most High said, "Go." I'll tell you when you get to the spot. I'll tell you if that's where I want for you to be at.
I got a question. I got an answer. Abraham, I'm saying this is what I was told.
Hold on, talk up some.
He was not, he a Hebrew. I was always told that I was always taught he was a Gentile. That's true.
Well, you didn't really have that distinction between Israel and the nations because Israel didn't exist.
Oh, okay. I'm glad you cleared that up.
Right, because Israel came out of Abram, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess you could technically say he's part of the nations of the world. When we talk about Hebrew, we think about you know, those people who came from Abraham, who crossed over. He crossed over. He left out from among his people and moved out and did something else.
So you can't say one of them.
I think you must say that, right? That's what he is. And we see how he's the father of the faith, right? Because he's basically moving out. I want to look at, but I want to talk about faith some. If we look over, let me see. Let me pull this up over here. Yeah, I got one. Thanks. Okay, I want to look at, let's see what verses. I want to look at 1 through Hebrews 11, 1 through 3. Because this is going to be talking about something that when we look back, we see this is what Avram was doing. Like he was living this out over there, you know, being an example for us. Hebrews 11, 1 through 3.
Yeah, right now. And belief is the substance of what is expected, the proof of what is not seen. By the elders obtain witness. By belief, we understand that the ages were prepared by the word of Elohim, so that what is seen was not made of what was visible.
Okay, very good. So when we look over here in the over here is translating this word as belief. King James says faith, that word in the Greek is pistis, which means persuasion, conviction, assurance, fidelity. This thing that you have been convinced of. You're sure of it. There's not a doubt in your mind. There's confidence. There is assurance in this thing, right? So it says that faith is the substance of what is expected, the proof of what is not seen. So when we look at this, so the substance of the thing that you're hoping for, the substance of the thing that you're expecting, is faith. Faith is that, right? Faith is the substance of what is expected, the proof of what is not seen. So when we think about this first verse right here, it's troubling, I think, for our carnal minds, because we want to have tangible proofs and things to verify situations. If somebody sits up here and talk to me about I don't know, some restaurant that they went to or something, right? Most times I gotta sit up here, I gotta look at people's testimonies, the reviews, right? I can't just hear, somebody can't just say, well, there's this place over here, they really got good food. First thing I'm doing, let me see how many stars they got. Let me see if I can't verify what this person sitting over here talking about. If I'm sitting up there buying something on Amazon, just because the price is right, I got to look and see how many stars they got. How many people can sit up here and verify these things? I want some evidence to what is being said. But this thing that this is talking about something that you're having a expectancy, you're having this assurance of a thing, but it's not based on tangible things that you can touch. The proof of what is not seen. So when we think back, when we look back over, when we looking at Abram, where the Most High says to him, go, we don't have really a backstory, but we have to come to the conclusion that in order for him to get to the place where he's able to just go at the command of the Almighty, there had to be some type of relationship that was established for him to believe in the Almighty in the first place, to get to the place where he was like, okay, I'll do it. Because there's no plan involved here, right? Just go. If I was just be like, John, go ahead, just go. And then like, I'll call you when you halfway there. You're gonna be like, what? Like, which direction? Like, what you talking about? Like, just tell me, just give me like a heads up. Like, trust, that's the same word. We dealing with the same concept, trust, faith, right? It's the same thing. Romans 10:17 says that, so then belief or faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of Elohim. Where did Abraham get this faith that he had from? Where did he get it from? He had to have at this point had some type of relationship with the Almighty to get him to a place to exhibit this faith, that he did. Because again, when we look at what we see from Avram at this point, at the beginning, he's really exhibiting for us. He's showing us kind of he's the poster child here for faith. Just go. Just get up your things. Leave from all of the things that are familiar to you, your country, this place that they were, that is called Haran, is named for his family member. Right? He's named for his people. He stayed in a place that was his people's place. Right? Leave from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to this land which I'll show you. That's faith. Let's go back over to Hebrews 11 real quick before we get back into Genesis. Hebrews 11 verse 8 through 10. Hebrews 11, 8 through 10.
By belief, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he was about to receive an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By belief, he sojourned in the land of promises, stranger, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he was looking for the city, having foundations, whose builder and maker is Elohim.
Hold on, read 10 again.
For he was looking for the city, having foundations, whose builder and maker is Elohim.
We talked about last week this city that was made by men and what they did with the building of that city. But over here is talking about whose builder and maker is Elohim. I think an interesting point when we look at verse 9, we're talking about by belief he sojourned in the land of promise as a stranger, dwelling in tents. Dwelling in tents. Right, that's kind of different from when we think about these big cities like we talked about last week in terms of setting up these structures. Right, over here it's talking about Avram dwelling in tents. He's moving. He's not kind of stagnant in a particular location. He is moving forward, a sojourner in a land of promise as a stranger, a sojourner in a land that will become his, but he's moving around in it as a stranger. So again, we have this thing that's going on with Avram and this moving out in faith. Scripture tells us that without faith, it's impossible to please Elohim. You cannot do it. That's what it says. What verse is that? Yeah, I'll look that up. Somebody find out what verse that is. But I think I quoted it exactly what it says. Without faith, it is impossible to please Elohim. So we got to think about that. We must think about that. For our own selves, where is our faith? Yeah.
Well, for me, I know when I say my prayers, I know in my heart, He will answer them. He's all the time, and I believe that.
You got faith in that.
Hebrews 11:6. Absolutely.
Oh, we just passed over it, right? Yeah. We just skipped this. It's in the same verse. But without faith, it is impossible to please Elohim. For he who comes to Elohim has to believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who earnestly seek him. You got to know that. You got to know it, right? That's what we seen with Avram. The Most High said, "Go." Avram said, "All right, I'm gonna go." You could tell me as we going. But there wasn't no hesitation, right? Because he had that belief, he had that faith. I want to look at, I want to pull up this word over here because we looked at the Greek, and I'm not really into the Greek, but the Hebrew equivalent for pistis, which we see over here, just translated in this in the scriptures as belief, or in the KJV as faith. The Hebrew equivalent is 530. Emunah, 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 which means truth, faithfulness. Let me pull up this here. Firmness, security, moral faithfully, faithfulness, a set office. So stability, steady, truly, truth, and verily. Right. So this word emunah, which is translated as faith, which again is the Hebrew equivalent of this pistis, this thing that without we're unable to please Elohim. So it's saying without stability, we could say, without stability, it is impossible to please Elohim. Without firmness, it's impossible to please Elohim. If you're wishy-washy in your so-called faith in Elohim, guess what? That's not faith at all, right? Because that's the opposite, right? He's saying over here, this word here, emunah, in the Hebrew, emunah, is firmness, security. Avram wasn't like, well, how far is the trip? Like, how long gonna take for us to get over there? Right? That wasn't what it was, right? He just went. Avram, no, he was raised by his. Well, he was raised. Well, let's talk about that. He was raised by his daddy and them, right? And they stayed in a place. They stayed in a place that was named after his. Here, let's look at. We write on. This is not a tangent at all. Let's go over here to Genesis. Let me pull this up. Genesis. We're looking at 12. We're going to go back to 11. Let's look at Okay, 27. Let's look at 27 down through 29. Read Genesis 11, 27 through 29. Genesis 11, verse 27 through 29.
This is the genealogy of Sarah. Sarah got forth Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran got forth Lot. Haran died before his father Sarah, land of his birth. It says Abram looked, and his name was supplied. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. The name of Abram's wife was Malka. Daughter of Aaron, father of Malka, father of Jephthah.
Okay, so Terah was the father of Avram. Nahor, and Haran. The place where they was at was Haran. That was named after Avram's brother. So he must have, we know that he died before his father, so his life was kind of short-lived, but you can assume that he was successful because they talked about that place and called it Haran. He had a fast and exciting life, probably, right? Because things typically the order of life is your parents die before you. Typically something happened whenever you go first, and that's what happened with Haran, who was Lot's father. So let's look at some things. When we think about, let's see if I want to start talking about this right here or not. Okay, I'll go back, but so if we look at, I want to look at some things here, because the question is asked is who raised him? How did he know? How did he know? When we think about, again, when we think about the things that are shown to us from the actions of the people in the scriptures, like making offerings to the Almighty, we don't see any commands that talk about descriptions of animals that can be used for sacrifice, but we see people sacrificing to the Almighty. We read down to chapter 12, verse 9. Verse 8 at the end says, verse 8 of chapter 12, and from there he moved to the mountain east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east, and he built there a slaughter place to Yahweh and called on the name of Yahweh. Called on the name of Yahweh. So somehow he learned it. Exactly. It had to have been based on the oral traditions from the forefathers, passed down from father to son as they went down. How do we know? How do we know what's acceptable? It's obviously acceptable because the Most High is calling them out. He's calling them out, right? So he's doing something that's okay. Avram. So even though we see that where they were, this place that ended up being this place called Haran, that was actually a place where they found the archaeology. Those people were heavy into moon worship where they were. Who was those people that you talk about that Islam got their little practice, some of their practices from?
Sabians.
The Sabians was in this place over here. So we know that place there was idolatry in this place. Where they was, where he came out from. Right, but and he spoke to Avram specifically because he had people over him, right? And he spoke to him specifically. But what I'm saying is that Avram had to get what he knew from somewhere. And again, we see that his faith at this point was strong enough for him to hear from the Most High and know that it was the Most High. And when he heard it, he went. He wasn't confused about, was it this moon god that the rest of these people worship or whoever else? Is it just my mind playing tricks on me or whatever? He heard, he knew, we can assume that he had a relationship with the Almighty, at least to the fact where he was able to hear from him and do based on his hearing. So in terms of who taught him, is probably like unto, the type of existence that we're in, where we can be in a place and learn the truth at the same time as there being all of this other stuff going on around us. Maybe our parents even told us the way, but they not doing exactly how they should, but they still told us how we supposed to do, and then we able to move forward even though they not moving forward. It's the same thing we see over here with Avram.
Or you can learn it from like other relatives, grandparents, to be like living a certain way your parents might not be.
Well, yeah, and yeah.
And back in them days, everything was more closer, like just a few years ago, it was more grandparents with their grandkids. Now it's going to get more extended, like grandparents are younger now, so it's not really everything's divided. But back then, everything was structured, so grandparents were probably most likely they were involved.
Yeah, they had a family. They within the family, and we see Avram takes that structure to where he is. It don't talk about that over here, but we could look at the historical and see how things were set up, where they had their communities was based around their patriarchs. They're telling us the genealogy of Terah, right? The father of Avram, who had these 3 sons, and they stayed in this place again that ended up being this place called Haran. But they was there, and they probably stayed in a place that was headed up by Avram's father. And maybe Avram was over there, and Nahor was over there, and Haran was over there, and they had their little sub families, but they was all kind of in a community. Just like we see later on how Avram goes out, and when he goes, he takes Lot, his nephew, whose father's not around, right? And he takes his nephew Lot with him, and they're a part of a literal community that's headed up by Avram, the patriarch of that situation.
I look at, Yahweh knows who's going to accept what he's doing. Notice that he picked his other brother.
Well, right, because when we
Who was his brother?
Right?
Who are those two guys?
that's who he left.
He didn't.
Well, we know Haran died, but Nahor, that's who he left, right?
Right. I'm looking at. We could. We take questions.
What land is that? You said Aram? What land are they in? You know? Is that the one where
Over here it says that Haran died before his father in Terah, in the land of his birth, and the King James of Pride says Ur of the Chaldean.
Yeah, it does say that.
What land is that in?
So they talk about it being kind of between wherever the Euphrates and the Tigris is. They talk about it being in between those places. It's kind of near Mesopotamia. KJV says Ur of the Chaldeans is what it says. Verse 28. But I'm saying where it's at physically, if you was go to Google Earth, it's like over there by where the Euphrates is. But to your point over here, in terms of him knowing who's going to be obedient. And that's why he chose them in the first place. That's what the Bible says. Romans 8 and 28 and 29. Romans 8, 28 and 29. And we know that all things work together for the good of to them that love Elohim, to them that are called according to his purpose. 29 is a verse. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his son. So when we look and think about the Most High and his choosing is based, his predestination is based on his foreknowledge. In other words, I know that he's going to be, who I want for him to be. Therefore, that's who I'm choosing. Whom he did foreknow, he also did predestine. Okay, so over here let's go back over to Bereshit, back over to Genesis over here in chapter 12. I want to look at some things here. Yeah. Well, let's go back. We talked a little bit about we'll get back to that. We dealt with the question briefly in terms of who taught him. We talked about that a little bit, but I want to go back because again, talking about faith, talking about emunah, talking about the attributes that Avram exhibited in his moving out, the fact that he must have had some degree of a foundation and experience and relationship with the Almighty for him to have that firmness, so that and to have that hearing, to actually be able to hear from the Almighty and know when he was supposed to go. When we think about faith, let's look at Deuteronomy 32. Deuteronomy 32 verse 4. 32
Are y'all there?
verse 4.
Give him a chance to get there.
Yeah, read that nice and loud.
Just 4.
32, just verse 4.
32:4.
Faith. Again, without faith, it's impossible to please Elohim.
Y'all there? All right.
Read that.
The rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways are right rule, an L of truth, and without unrighteousness. Righteous and straight is he.
Okay, so what we want to concentrate on over here is it says that he is the mighty one of truth. He's the El of Emunah. He is the mighty one of truth. Right? So it's impossible to please the Most High without faith, without truth. He's the Elohim of truth. So if we think about this hard and long enough, we can get to the understanding that without exhibiting the characteristics of the Almighty, it's impossible to please the Almighty. He's the Elohim of truth. But he calls for us to, just as he is faithful, he calls for his people also to be faithful. And he's the God of faithfulness, of emunah. Here, let's look at this word a little bit. Emunah. Emunah. I want to look at this word. Let me see if I can get all the letters here. Emunah. Emunah. Amun. Oh, here we go. Here we go. That's not it. Emunah. Oh, here we go. Emunah. Okay, if we look at this in the ancient, right? Again, that word means firmness, right? He's the Elohim of firmness, right? Let's look at these over here. So this word in the Hebrew looks like this. Emunah, Aleph, Mem. This is a Vav, a Nun, and a Hey. In the ancient, it looks like this. It's the ox's head, which gives us the idea of strength. Ox's head gives you the idea of strength, right? So we have strength. We have the Mem, which is water, which has the idea of mightiness. Think about water. We just saw what's that, Niagara Falls, and we saw that water rushing down, right? When you got water moving, water is mighty, right? So we see over here with this picture of the water mightiness, right? So you got strong, you got mighty, you have this here tent peg, which is the Vav, the tent peg, which the tent peg secures. When you're building your tent, you have that little tent peg that secures the tent. So you have strength, you have strong, mighty, you have security over here. And then you have the Nun, which is the sprouted seed, right? That sprouted seed is about to go fertilize something and continue on the thing that it from which it came, right? So continuance. So you have a continuance of strength and mightiness and security, right? And then over here with the hay, you have this breath. And we think about breath, we think about the Ruach is a breath, right? The Ruach is breath, right? So you have this strength and this mightiness and this security and this continuance that comes from the Ruach in firmness, right? In firmness. That's firmness. That's emunah. So when we think about the fact that, again, of us learning of this idea of firmness and having this firmness in our faith, being able to be in the place where we understand the Most High, at least to the fact that we know that He's the creator and He is the one who is in control of all things. Right. If we could just get to that place right there, that's getting you to a place right there. If we know that He's the one who is in control of everything, right? We don't really got to get much further than that. If we could just get to that. Because we definitely get into situations where we allow these situations to cause us to forget who is in control of things, right? But we have to keep in mind that when we're doing that, right, we're exhibiting faithlessness, right? We let our situations and things rise up, and those situations get higher in our minds than what the creator is. Faithlessness. Right? If we understand who the Almighty is, and how that relates to us, we should be walking around here victorious all the time.
Right.
And when we're not, we can just be cognizant of what's going on the inside of us and understand that, I'm putting my stuff, I'm letting my stuff grow higher than it should be.
Right.
Those are like spirits of doubt. Start going higher. It'll make it hard for you to even be positive. It'll make it hard for you to allow that. Because when it's going, make it hard for you to handle any situation. It could be a regular situation placed in front of you, but because you allow yourself to be so consumed with out food, whatever, and now it's just sitting there investing away in your body. Now when you got a regular situation, it might not even be that serious. With this whole consumer.
Yeah. But what you call that?
That's not healthy at all.
What you call that though?
That's like keeping this.
Okay. That's broad. Let's narrow it down some. So where we at? Faithlessness. That's what that is. So, but without faith, it's impossible to please Him.
But I'm just saying, I'm understanding that because I'm really speaking for myself. Like just recently, like one little, just a little bit of doubt. It started off like maybe not much. It was just a little bit of doubt.
Yeah.
And that little bit of doubt that I let sit there grew. So now when it's like right now, I can't even handle no situations. My mind's not like I might feel a little bit better doing the study, but not really. And it's like throughout, like go just let it manifest, and that's definitely. You can tell that's not a number just because of how the emotions. Yeah.
You talking Bible though right now. You speaking the Bible because a little bit of leaven is the whole lump. You got that little bit of stuff in there, and you let that stuff just go, and then it just turned into something else. But.
It's the reason why he said he's not poured out. Like it's really not healthy. So I can see why he's
right.
About that. It's totally not healthy.
But when you go ahead.
It's so hard to focus on this, the word, right? It feels like the trauma just consumes you. So it's hard to focus on what's right, the word, say,
right.
Not having doubts.
So faith comes by hearing the word. Right? That's how our faith is strengthened, by hearing the word. When we're able to look to here. We don't gotta just here. Let's look at Psalm 9. I'm gonna pull it up.
I'm looking when that happened, that's the tip of the I don't know, good. You know, when I feel myself,
I'm near.
Hold on, Psalm.
I already put scriptures in my mind.
But I was going to add to what Stubbs was saying about traumatic because, especially with us
9 and
coming
10.
from the life we're
9 and 10.
I'm just the under. I can understand. When I'm sitting up there and I'm going to set a situation that was presented prior to me knowing this, I just be feeling like this was like an eye opener for me to understand like how and why it's more better, it's going to be more smoother for me to be this way because mostly all experiences I went through was all private. So I wasn't living fully for him, but he allowed situations to happen to me. He allowed me to do situations. He allowed all that to happen.
9 and 10 is chapter 9, verse 9 and 10.
I'm gonna be like, dang, why me? Like that. I'm gonna feel like that. I'm gonna feel like you make it to where I'm putting the finger instead of just fully like only that situation.
Let's look at some of these scriptures over here. Because faith comes by hearing the word. Right? Psalms Psalms 9, 9 and 10. Read that.
Y'all there? Psalm 9, verse 9 to 10. All right?
Yeah.
Yeah, read that.
Law in Yah is a refuge for the crushed one, and refuge in times of distress. And those who know your name trust in you. For you have not forsaken those who seek you, O Yah.
Okay, very good. So these are things that come with understanding who the Most High is. Who, again, we know obviously Avram was at this place because he was able to hear, not only hear the voice of the Almighty, but he just went out in faith. Knowledge, having a knowledge of just who he is. Those who know your name trust in you. And it's not just about knowing the letters of the name, right? All the things that are included in who the Almighty is. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about those who know your name. They trust in you. For you have not forsaken those who seek you, O Yahweh. So we have to remember these things. And again, recognizing that when we get in a place, it don't matter what the situation is. If we're talking about the creator and sustainer of all things, there ain't nothing that you could come up with that could be more than higher than the Almighty. I don't care what the thing is. There ain't nothing that you could say that is going to have more importance, influence, whatever, than the Almighty. But all of this goes into just knowing him, just having an understanding of who he is. Just we talk about faith. Faith comes by hearing. We have to hear his word to understand who he is, understanding his character and allowing his character to be developed inside of us. This is what, in spite of the fact that Avram was in this place that was riddled with paganism, he got enough word in him to get him to the place where he was able to move out from there, where he obviously wasn't consumed by it. He had enough word in him to know the Most High and hear him and move as a result of it. And even if it was just about knowing how to just knowing, we know that he knew how to make offerings to him and he knew how to call him his name. We know that for sure. We could just say that if that's all he knew, for him that was enough. Yeah. In a place where it wasn't nobody else doing it. Even his own people couldn't have been doing it because they would have went with him. In a place where everybody around him is wicked, he was still able to get to the place where he was able to be victorious in the Almighty, in spite of his surroundings.
He set the bar high. That's why I think that I believe he set the bar high, and that's why the Most High felt. Well, I believe that's why he wanted Israel to be the light of the can be done. And one person can do it like on a massive scale, on a large scale, they should be able to do that.
Well, I mean, you don't even got to talk about nation. You can just talk about you. You know what I mean? You can just talk about it as an individual. You can just talk about just your family.
Right.
You know, just as individuals. And again, you saying he set the bar high.
Because even when he told him to sacrifice his son.
Well, we didn't get to that. We didn't get to that place yet.
We didn't even question
We
that.
didn't. Right, but what we're gonna find, I don't want to talk too much about it because we didn't get there yet. But what we're gonna find, we see a growth in Avram.
Right.
I'm saying right here at this place here, from what we can see of him, is very minimal. He knew how to worship the Almighty,
right,
and he knew how to call on his name. We know that for a fact. Now we see later on where he has issues, faith issues, where he needs to be strengthened. But he had enough right here where he's able to be called out from the wickedness and go out and follow after the Most High.
And when you said that down the road, because he's right before you get to the side, it lets me know you make us see.
Right.
You know, that Yahweh was letting us see everybody ain't perfect.
Right.
You know, that's what I
Right.
like about it.
But again, we didn't get to that yet. All we see over here is him in the midst of wickedness. We see him strong right over here.
Right.
But I'm saying he's strong with just these little bit of tools. I know how to worship the Almighty,
Right.
and I know how to call on his name. He might know other stuff. I'm saying as far as what the scriptures is explicit about telling us.
That's like his first stages.
Yeah, all he know how to do, he knows who the Most High is, and he know what he capable of doing.
Right.
That's all we know.
That's
And that in and of itself is enough to get him out from in the midst of wickedness, where his own family ain't even a safe haven for him to be. He got to leave from out of there.
Dad was making idols. Shoot, he had to get up out of there.
That's why I said about his brother, because God picked him, not the other brother.
Right.
So let's we know all of us. We know our hearts. We know who's going to come and who's
Right, he chooses us. We don't choose him.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
But all are called, but only a few are chosen. Some people think they're chosen, and they step out there on their own accord and end up getting smacked in the head and run into brick walls.
I just want to pull up one more verse, 8 in Proverbs, and then we're going to move on. Proverbs 18 and 10. Yup.
Proverbs.
I mean, you should know these verses here. These are some go-to ones right here.
10 what?
Just 10, yeah. That's probably your son right there. Answer.
Get on. Let's take over, John.
Read Proverbs 18 and 10.
The name of Yahweh is a strong tower. Righteous run into it and are safe.
Look at that. So Avram, that's all he knew was the name of Yahweh. But he knew, in knowing that, that's a place where he could go and be safe. He said the righteous run into it. They running. What's that word? I got to see what that word is right there. We ain't playing no games about getting to where that name is. Proverbs 18 and 10. And run. That word is, let's see over here. It literally means to run, to guard. It means to travel, journey by moving one's legs more rapidly than walk. It literally means to run. You getting there, you getting over there to it. You're not playing no games. You're not like, well, I'm going to get there when I get there. You running to that name, right? Okay, let's get back over here. So, let's see here. We looked at that. Let's go down to, hold on. I'm going to get back to that since we're over here. I want to look at, all right, let's just go back. I'm jumping around. Let's go back to verse 2 of Genesis chapter 12. Genesis 12. Okay, verse 2. Let's read, let's just deal with verse 2 and 3. Read 2 and 3 real quick.
I shall make the great nation and bless you, and make your name great shall be a blessing. I shall make those who bless you, and I shall bless you. I shall bless those who bless you, and curse him who curses you. And in you all, the plans of the earth shall be blessed.
Okay, very good. So when we look over here again, so we saw that Avram is told to go out of his father's house into this land that it will show you. And when he does that, there's some things that's going to take place, right? There's some things that are going to take place. The Most High is going to make a covenant with Avram. He's going to make a covenant with Avram. So when we think about covenants, the scriptures really kind of a backdrop of what's going on in the scriptures is covenants. And there's really, when you think about the covenants, well, who can just start running off some of the known covenants that we have in the scriptures? Okay, Noahic covenant. Okay, very good. Well, yeah. When you talk about those things, you talking about the right. So the Abrahamic, huh? Okay, so we got the Noahic covenant, we got the Abrahamic covenant. We're talking about Israel's going to be the Mosaic covenant.
Oh yeah, David, everybody's gonna be in the.
Okay, the Davidic covenant. Okay, very good. What else?
David's my favorite.
That's your favorite covenant?
No, he's my favorite person so far. Because I'm gonna say.
Okay, but hold on. Before you start going into that, let's see if we could think about at least two more covenants that I thought of. There's more, maybe you could think of another one. We said Mosaic, we said Noahic, we said Abrahamic, we said Mosaic, we said Davidic covenant. I can think of two more. Which one was that?
Oh, yeah, he did something that about the, something.
Like, yes,
oh yeah,
yeah.
You mean talking about in terms of being fruitful and multiplying and
well, there was two, like before he got cast out, and then he was the instructions part.
Yeah. I think I've seen people talk about that as being the Edenic covenant, like the covenant from Eden.
Are you talking about when it said
that could go on a list too?
The woman gonna hurt, start to strike.
But that was judgment though. That was more judgment. Yeah. So that was more judgment. I have seen people talk about that Edenic. I can't say it very good. Covenant, the covenant from Eden. So that could go on the list, but I can think of two more that nobody's saying. The priestly covenant is the Levitical, the Levites.
Oh yeah,
So the Levites going to be priests forever. And then one more that y'all should have said first. No, we said that one. We said the new covenant. Right. Yeah, we said the Noahic covenant. Yeah. So we see all these covenants. Now, if we talk about, if we exclude the Edenic covenant and the Noahic covenant, the rest of these covenants over here is all really connected to each other, and it all really starts with the Abrahamic covenant. All those other covenants really are kind of extensions of building right from the Abrahamic covenant. So when we look over here and see kind of the first pronouncements of kind of the criterias that are connected with the Abrahamic covenant, again, thinking about this covenant is really kind of the building blocks for everything that's going on in the whole Bible. Okay, so again, so it starts, everything starts with the Abrahamic covenant. It says that I will make you a great nation, right? I'll make a great nation. I'll bless you. I'll make your name great. I don't know if that's in relation to Abraham in and of itself, because he does go from like his name basically becomes father. Oh, he goes from exalted father to father of many nations, right? That's how it goes. Avram is exalted father, and Abraham is father of many nations. So he literally did make his name literally great. But then also we could think about it in terms of um, making his name great. Again, we think about the scriptures is a book about Abraham and his seed. The whole thing is about the propagation of the seed of Abraham. So the idea of making your name great is something that got, it got layers almost to it, right? You will be a blessing. You shall be a blessing. Again, we could look at that in terms of Abraham based on the fact that what came out of him is going to end up being a blessing, or, I'm saying that could be either personal or national in regards to that right there in terms of you shall be a blessing. In verse 3 talks about I shall bless those that bless you and curse him who curse you. And again, we think about these covenants that are made with the Most High, especially most of these ones. The Noahic, again, was all about what the Most High was going to do, and then everybody was just going to really just benefit from the promise that he made. But these other things, well, again, kind of the Abrahamic, well, I guess it was dependent upon the obedience of Abraham and actually going out and doing what he said, right? But really after that, everything after that was based off of Abraham's obedience. So it didn't have nothing to do with what the people ended up doing or being, because it was all based on the covenant that the Most High made with Abraham after he was gone. We even now today are blessed because of what the Most High promised to Abraham. Or we could say, I guess we could say that we've received curses as a result of the blessing that was given to Abraham. But again, we think about the curse of the Almighty for his people. He wants for us that to be a thing that changes us, that causes us to turn away from those things, recognizing that we're here because of disobedience and actually turning from disobedience to obedience, turning from faithlessness to faithfulness.
So look, I'll say something.
Go ahead.
I'm just sitting here thinking, like, you know, that the beginning of wisdom is what?
The fear.
Fear.
Yeah.
It's like, looking back at Abraham, it's like, he's seen somewhere that that's a relationship. You know, if you don't do this, you fear a judgment
Right.
that's going to come.
Yes.
And it's like people didn't have that fear of judgment
Yes.
for what they was doing. So, like, you don't have no respect. You don't know. Or even if they, like, not to say you don't know, but how people live in life and all this stuff happens to them, they don't have no idea how they actually relate. And it's like they don't have the fear.
Right.
Like, you tell them, it's like, oh.
I think a lot of them don't. I think it's more so like how it is now. A lot of people don't really believe that. Like believe and I think like a young gal, they're like prove to them how God is.
Yeah.
And was bad. And was bad. A lot of times it comes from watching the contradiction of religion. Like they'll watch it contradict with each other. Like I think it was Trisha was talking. She said her philosopher, she's a philosopher. They was saying all this stuff against God. I said, well, that's not really. That's because of what they're everything that they're being contradiction. Like because of what it contradicts with the word. You're actually just reading the Bible from the Bible. You're reading nothing contradicts. But if you're coming from a religious standpoint, something they'll come across something like, oh, we're reading this, but why don't we do this? And like, for people who got it, you can do it, you have to. I just think a lot of people don't believe in it also.
Especially people like in this younger generation, I think what tarnishes their understanding or their belief is what they see in the streets. I think it's hard for a 16, 17-year-old who never really had that upbringing to believe in Yahweh when he's seeing his friends die left and right, or he's seeing another or the father of me, or you just see all the stuff going on in the world. So I mean, I can understand why you said that, but it's just that just speaks volumes to the mind state of these kids today. When you say that,
You got a relationship with them, you'll have understanding. Or man, you got one you don't understand, you'll feel like, why was, when I said to you, my brother said, sometimes it's like, if it was about why we had slavery. And my brother's answer was, how did you know that those people that was slaves didn't pray like, I pray one day my great grandkids don't have to be slaves. So how do you know that you don't know what their prayers was? They probably got answers. So you don't know what they was praying. You might have prayed like, oh, just one day they're not slaves anymore. They can live in their own houses. If that was their prayer, that's been already answered. Like, so you don't know what they was asking for. They probably wasn't asking for.
Yeah, but when you think about the big picture, though, which is important when we're talking to our own people, is that people need to understand that the reason why we're in the situation that we're in is because, first of all, being the people of Yahweh and turning away from them and being disobedient and understanding that a lot of these things that have happened to us because of the fact that the Most High is chastising his people, right? Because he don't care about those that are not his people.
Right.
They not. I'm not going out here whipping somebody else's kids.
Right.
They could just be who they could do whatever they're gonna do.
Right.
I'm gonna whip my own kids.
That is true.
Right. So when we think about the state of our people and we think about it from a biblical perspective, all this bad stuff is happening to you because it's connected to something.
Right.
But we have to get to the place where we understand that can be turned around in you. That can be turned around in you when you get an understanding of the fear of look at Proverbs 1. Proverbs 1 down to verse 1, chapter 1, read verse 2 through 7.
Are y'all there? All right, give you some time to get there.
Proverbs 1.
Proverbs chapter 1,
Said
2 through 7. Powerful. Powerful. This is the most powerful point that could be made, because if you don't got this, there ain't nothing that could happen after that. If you ain't got to this beginning part, and again we see the results that Avram went out. If this is true, then he already got to this place first, and then now he's able to move out. Go ahead, read that verse 2. Go ahead. 2 through 7.
Right. But knowing wisdom and discipline, for understanding the words of understanding, for receiving the discipline of wisdom, righteousness, right ruling, and straightness, for giving insight to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. The wise one hears and increases learning, and the understanding one gets wise counsel. For understanding a proverb and a figure, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of Yah is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and discipline.
Okay, so it's so important to understand this. This is a crucial understanding to have when you think about your relationship with the Almighty, because it's going to come down to this right here. It says the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge. You can find other scriptures where it says the beginning of wisdom.
Right.
When you look at these things that are being discussed in here, it's different aspects of wisdom: righteousness, right ruling, straightness, discretion, understanding, discipline. All these things are the fruit, really, of that thing that begins with the fear of Yahweh.
Right.
Understanding who he is, knowing who he is. That's the fear of Yahweh. When I understand who he is, I know that there's consequences for me being outside of his will. And that affects everything. If I know that if I'm not lined up with what he wants me to be doing, that something is going to happen,
right,
either now or later, or both.
Right.
Could be now and later, right? If I know that there's a connection, a direct connection with how I'm walking around on this earth and the Almighty, it's going to cause me to want to be doing something different with my situation. But this over here says it's the beginning of knowledge. It's the beginning of, you can't even start to be thinking about knowledge or wisdom of the Almighty if you don't first even understand who he is.
I want to say something on that.
Go ahead.
Because you can have knowledge, you can have wisdom, and that is a necessity for them both. But without understanding, the two of them are useless. Useless at all. See, first, the beginning, as far as the knowledge of Yah, you got to know who he is. You got to get that information to even know who he is. You got to get that information about the laws to even know you're sinning. That's why they was incorporated, to show us that we were sinning. So when we operate in that knowledge, that is wisdom, because we operate in that information. And what we do with that is the form of understanding what to do and what not to do. And I'll make this real brief. There's quite a few times you might have children and y'all take them to the park. You might have your children out there and they playing with the other kids of the world, right? And there might be some times when they're cutting up, but they're doing what the world is doing, but you do not approve of what the world is doing. So you correct them. You tell them to bring me behind and sit down next to you for a while. You know, then you let them go. They go back out there and they keep messing up, cutting up, whatnot, you get fed up about it and you send them home. That's the same way y'all does to us. When we go out on the playground of the world and do things of the world which he disapproves, he chastises us quite often. Hey, but don't sleep him, because he can call you to go home too, just to protect you from being punished with the rest of the world. Just know that for a fact.
Okay, so again, in thinking about this idea of covenants and thinking about where we are, right? Dealing with the new covenant, dealing with the spirit, because again, when we talking about a people who were established in the Torah, right? Israel and the Torah is two things that's really inseparable from each other.
Sure
they had the law, statutes, and commandments.
Right.
They had all of those things.
Right.
And then yet, here we are.
Right.
Right? So we cannot forget about the Ruach.
Yeah.
Let's look just real quick. Isaiah 11, read let's see how far we want to go. Just 1 and 2. 1 and 2. 11 minutes.
Y'all there? All right. And a rod shall come forth from the stump of Yeshua, and a sprout from his roots shall be fruitful. The spirit of Yah shall rest upon him, the ruach of wisdom and understanding, the ruach of counsel and might, the ruach of knowledge and the fear of Yah.
When we talk about where we are today, we cannot not talk about the Ruach, the spirit. This we can look over here and see how the Davidic covenant is connected with this, but how again that's an extension of the Abrahamic covenant that gets us all the way up to the new covenant, which is the Ruach, the spirit of the Almighty, dwelling on the inside of us, strengthening us so that we're able to walk in the spirit of wisdom and understanding and counsel and might and knowledge and the fear of Yahweh.
Right. This particular passage was referring to a Mashiach, Yeshua. It was referring to him because he is indwelt with the Ruach of Elohim, which is why under the new covenant, the Ruach is now presented to us because he had to leave in order for the Ruach to come to us. And it's the Ruach that will show us all truth and all things. But here's the kicker. You must accept the Ruach. You must walk and operate through the Ruach. There are many who do not, and they fall in error because they lean on their own understanding. And I'll give you a prime example. Torah only. They are without the Ruach because they do not believe in the new covenant.
They believe in the Torah, though.
They believe in the Torah.
They got all kind of Torah.
They got all kind of Torah, and it tells them that. But they lack understanding of the new covenant. They do not walk in the ways of the Ruach that was sent to us. It is very important that we walk in the way of the Ruach. That's all.
I was going to say that's the same way when he said that we have to first accept the Ruach. But that's the same when people are first accept the Ruach.
Yeah, same thing.
It's the same
Same thing. People been denying Messiah since day one.
Since day one, man.
And they still gonna be doing it.
I think they're doing that because a lot of when you accept them, you're gonna realize I be learning more stuff on a regular. I learn more things like that. But when you're accepting them like that, it's very contrary to your life, to your sin. And a lot of people don't like. They don't want to turn away from everything.
Because they believe that once they accept them, there's a level of comfort that comes with that. I mean, it's comfort. It's comfort. You're not it's not your level. It's not your to say comfort. Like, you're adding that venom. Like, you don't want to live in the way you used to live. Like,
And that's why, because it's like, I don't want to keep like talking down the road because it's not really my place, but like, it's just like, if this, you can really, and when you're, you can do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you put it in your mind, because the way you can do a little bit of this, then you're cool. All you need is this, and that's what they're being taught. So why would they want to fully, why would they even accept something that's not letting them do a little bit of this, a little bit of that?
Well, I mean, that's what your carnal mind, that's what your carnal mind is, that's the excuse that your carnal mind come up with.
Right.
Well, if I go over there, then what's my life gonna be like? I ain't gonna be able to do this. It's really wicked. That's wicked, really. But it's your carnal mind though. But if we get stuck in our carnal mind, we can't understand the things of the spirit. You're not able to understand it. You just can't even understand it.
Because you can grieve it. You can grieve the Ruach too. There's numerous times I was getting ready to do something very terrible, and I'll feel that nudge. I'll hear that small voice. Don't do it, son. Do not do it. And there's quite a few times I ignored it, did it, and got in the jackpot and had consequences dealt to me. You know, but now I've grown to maturity, I know how to listen to that.
I think that goes by tradition, and I see it for myself. I had different things presented to me that always said it right here, and so now today for me, I just can't go no other way because this truth was presented to me, and I accepted it. And my daughter said, even though I want to witness this out, but she said everybody's not going to accept the truth that you're not going to do, and that's true. And some people are caught up in traditions from the way they were brought up.
Right.
Yeah.
That is true.
Let's look at real quick based on what y'all saying over here, because this is important for us to understand too. I just looked it up, but then I forgot what verse it is. Hold on. Oh yeah, it is 14. John 10 and 14. John 10, Yochanan 10, verse 14.
That's it.
Yep, just 14.
This coincides with Ezekiel 34, 11, 12, Hebrews 13, 20. Wow. Y'all ready?
Yes.
I am the good shepherd. Let me say that again. I am the good shepherd, and I know mine, and mine know me.
Okay, so this is what we have to get to the place of understanding. Everybody that hears the word ain't going to accept the word. But the people who the Most High has designed to accept the word are going to accept the word. He said, I know mine and mine know me. Right? That's what it says. So there's going to be those who, like, you can't sit up there and talk to everybody till you become blue in the face. Because some people just ain't gonna get it. Or some people ain't gonna get it from you. But the people who the Most High wants to get it, they're gonna get it. So
But when you go down a little further, saying that he has other sheep, maybe those that we speak to, it's not their time yet.
right, it's the same thing. Maybe ain't never gonna be the time.
Right.
You know, but you don't know that. But the thing is that you know, that can't be a thing that deters you from talking to people, but don't let it be a thing that causes you to be discouraged about it when you don't get no wins. When you like 0-50, you still got to keep on going.
But you don't know that plant that you can't plant the seed. It may not have sprouted right then and there. It may take time for it to come to fruition, but pretty much planting the seed.
And maybe that's all that you. Sometimes, some situations you get in where you're able to plant a seed and cultivate it and water it and do all kinds of things to nurture and all of that. But sometimes all you get to do is just drop the seed and go. You can't even cover it up with dirt or put the first water on it or nothing. All you can do is just drop the seed. That's all you can do in some situations. Yeah. So when they really start hearing, then they're gonna go out from among the people, just like Abraham did.
Just look at Paul. He thought he was working Yahweh and was just telling people until everything was presented to us.
That was somebody who was in Torah like a mug, right? And he was killing people who was sitting up here coming around with this, talking about this Yeshua stuff. We about the Torah, y'all on some other stuff, killing people,
Right.
Until that Ruach came and knocked his butt down, right? He heard about Yeshua, been knew about it.
Right.
But it took that spiritual thing to happen, and that's what we're talking about in terms of these covenants. It ain't about the Torah by itself, because all these everybody in here had the Torah.
Right.
But it's about that Ruach HaKodesh. It's the spirit. When that spirit get mixed in there, now you talking about something.
And you know what? What was you saying about that verse on down 16? The other sheep I have, which are not of this fold,
Right.
I have to bring them as well,
Right.
and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one shepherd. A lot of people misconstrued that and tried to say, "Oh, he's speaking of the Gentiles." No, he's not. He's not, because we got to understand there's a southern and northern kingdom. So that particular fold he's talking to is the one he was talking about. The other fold could have been other kingdoms, who have yet to hear his voice. They will hear his voice and heed to what he's going to say. He's coming for them too, because he said, "I come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel." People think Judah is just Israel. No, there's more than just Judah. There's other folds that belong into the whole of Israel.
But the other thing that we gotta think about, going back to Genesis, is that besides being a great nation, I will bless you, make your name great. You will be a blessing. I will bless those that bless you. I will curse those that curse you. In you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. So I'm going to say that you can look at that thing over there in John and that be something more than just talking about Israel. Because when we think about these covenants in the scriptures is the whole Bible is about restoring what was lost before there was even an Israel. He's doing it in you. He's doing it in you, but he is blessing all the clans of the earth will be blessed. He's restoring human beings. Human beings have been separated from the Almighty. They need to be restored. So it says, in you, through your seed, through Israel, all families. Before there was an even distinction to say nations really means Israelites. All families of the earth will be blessed. So we have to understand that yes, If we was gonna say there was a star of the show, is Israel.
Israel's it.
Right? But we cannot get to the place where we are not including human beings as a whole, because the whole point, if we look at the promise that was given to Abraham, the Abrahamic covenant, which all these other covenants are an extension of, and these other covenants make the Abrahamic covenant come true, we have to consider the fact that in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. How's that going to be?
Right. We gotta understand. Even I was implying that particular verse right there had to do with other folds of Israel, not counting Gentiles out, because it's obvious that Romans 11 talks about that. The grafted in, but it also tells them that they shouldn't even boast, as he said, because listen, Israel is the enemy of the gospel for your sake, sort of say, for your sake. The salvation was presented to Gentiles to provoke us to jealousy. You understand? So therefore, they have no room. They have no room to boast about it, because it, like he said, it is through Israel that all other nations shall come into the fold of the salvation. Then at that point, they'll become our neighbors, because they follow the laws of Yeshua, which is the laws of the Father. He did not come and change the laws of the Father and create his own, as Christian apologists like to say. Yeah. That is untrue. Mm-hmm. I want to make that clear.
Okay, so yes, very good. Okay, so let's keep on going here. I wanted to drop back again, as we're going through, just making it clear. We want to understand that, we see an example of faith exemplified through Abraham, understanding that the Most High's truths are universal. So if fear is the beginning of knowledge, if the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom, Avram had a relationship, a real relationship with the Almighty. We have to assume that he went through those same processes that everyone else does, in terms of having an understanding of who the Father is, understanding, having that fear, not even trying to, and I hate when people try to sugarcoat fear. Uh-huh. Fear literally means fear.
Fear means fear.
It's not like well, just it's respect. No, it's fear.
Trembling fear.
The Most High is really able to do something bad to you.
Right.
If you like, no, it's fear. It's real fear. I'm really scared.
It's a green light. Cars is going. I'm just looking. Are you scared to go?
Yeah.
It's worse than that.
Like that train is coming. Your feet's rumbling.
You gonna back up? Oh shoot!
Like
fear.
We see sin. If we could prevent it, somebody just put out fear. Like, oh no, because I know.
Yeah.
Listen, somebody get ready to take your life and point a gun at you. That type of fear.
Yeah.
Because y'all can do much more than that. It can cause you to suffer forever.
Many times people try to sugarcoat fear and make it be some soft thing and just say, well, it's respect, it's reverence. It could be all of those things, but we can't say that it's those things and then take away the trembling part.
Yeah.
Because it's that too.
Yeah.
It must be that. It must be that. It don't stay there, but it says it's the beginning. You understanding that he gonna put his smack down on you.
And it's wise.
And it's wise.
It turns into it though. It start off as just fear.
Let me give you a prime example, man. You be in jail for a homicide you didn't do, and you sitting there trembling because you're about to get life if it don't go your way. And you gotta face the judge, and you know what the judge is capable of doing. You fearing for that. Again, y'all can do 10 times worse. So it is that type of fear.
I'm gonna, my grandfather, that's how he brought me into church at a very young age. He always preached those fire and brimstone.
Hellfire.
Brimstone.
That's right.
But when I look back on that,
Yeah, you were scared, right? True. See, that's the thing. When I was I can even admit, when I was being brought up in Christianity, way back in the days, I can say that those elder pastors did preach fire and brimstone.
Hellfire.
You were sitting in your seat like, oh my God,
absolutely.
I need to change. They talking to me. They don't do that no more.
I don't want to, when I was growing up, I'm like, you can't commit a sin, so do it and you're sad.
Yeah.
I said,
Fear.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't want to serve no God like that. So me and my sister, we went to the Catholic faith.
Right, but it's
I was young.
it's funny that you're saying that, because really think about what you're saying when you're saying that. Just think about, I don't want that. I want something that's more palatable.
I went to an idol.
Well, no, I'm saying, I'm not saying. Wait. I'm saying that you.
Like I do now, but back then it was like.
Right. Yeah. But that's real though.
Yeah.
So we seek out something that's more like it's like what we got going on today, this politically correct stuff. Like that's too harsh. Let me tone down the language so that it could be more acceptable. Like that's what that is. Yes. Be afraid. Very afraid. Yeah.
My daughter has, I'm like, Stephen says no for that. She'll go up and.
It's a straight trembling.
And when they think about following her, like, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
Kid. And that's how we're living. That's how we're living. That's how our kids are living. I just say ours as a whole, not like our kids. But that's how our kids are living. That's how our parents are living. That's how our kids are living. They're just like this.
Fearless.
And cool with it.
Yeah.
And we'll point the blame, if something do happen, they don't understand that it's their own.
Yeah.
Right. That's why it's making know for yourself. Like I think Africa, one of them asked me who was my favorite person. I said so before I dated. But Africa was like, you don't know what he did. He killed a man and took his wife. Yeah. Which he did do, but I don't like
He did do that, but
I don't like him because of that. And I honestly do now because he is not. But I like that throughout everything he did, he was like, he always took like, he didn't push off on the like when that man was trying to call out personal on him when his son was trying to kill him. His men was like, oh, we're killing him right now, like basically he's person you down to the thing, and he was like, no, don't touch him, like my own son don't like me, and maybe y'all told him to do that, and maybe he'll see that I'm suffering now. And like he knew that his consequence, like he lost his first son, his other son killed the other son about raping him. Like it was so much, and he knew that was in contrast to what he did.
That's the problem. That's the problem.
But y'all might hear something with the sword, but never be the south. But he still blessed that line, and he never.
Well, he don't break his covenant. But he's never that line. He's never
Right.
He never asked y'all to take it off of him. He never. That's what like people that around her know fear, or they don't care, and they don't. And when problems speak to them, they don't even understand it. It's because of them.
There's a lot of fearless belief today in Israel too, but mainly in the Christian church, because if you think about back in the days how they had the small little churches, they didn't have a lot of members because they was preaching fire and brimstone. People didn't want to go and hear that crap, so they stayed away from it. Right now, check this out. Here we go with the gospel of prosperity. Years and years into the future, years and years ago, then you get these mega churches because it's a tickling of the ears. Now they preaching good sound doctrine, this gospel prosperity, what people want to hear, so they feel more comfortable sitting down listening to the lies. Sugarcoated.
And their converts are not.
Right, right.
These mega churches,
they're not getting fed properly.
Are getting rich, not the.
Oh, it's a multi-billion-dollar business today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know.
Exactly. That's the point. They're compromising with the Lord at this point. You got, just like you said years ago, people who were homosexual or whatever didn't want to go to church.
Right.
They don't want to.
Because they were scared.
Because they were told it was a spirit on them or pray over
right.
Now it's been compromised. They got they're preaching the word at this point. They're like, you got a whole like it's been compromised with the world. The world has so much influence instead of us having the influence on the world.
That was the fear. They feared y'all so much that they respected him enough to stay the heck away from him. You know, now they don't fear him. They just go in there. God loves me. He loves everybody.
So it's interesting how the Most High made us,
right?
Where we're able to relate to who He is and how He deals with His people. It's the same thing. We can see that with people. We can understand the father and son-child relationship in a functional way and see how that goes. And we can also see it in a dysfunctional way and see how that goes. When you have someone who never had any structure, or they never had anyone to guide them. They was able to do whatever they wanted to do their whole life and never got knocked down, as opposed to someone who does have structure. Someone who had, I tell my little babies, and I'll knock a baby down.
Well, you're like Bernie Mac. I will beat a kid.
I'll knock a baby down, right? But you people we have to have that.
Yeah.
There has to be fear, and I don't care about any of this other stuff. But if you do what I say, then we're in good shape.
Right.
I could deal with you now. Right, but the only thing I'm getting at is that we don't have to put the butt in. We don't got to put the butt in, because we don't have to try to soften the thing, because he literally but that's the place that we have to get to if we want to actually have that real firmness. We can't know him. How are we supposed to know him if we never feared him?
Baraka said, Shalom Baraka. She said, I noticed the closer I get to y'all, the less wiggle room I have. Like I can't even be rude to someone without getting straight smacked. She said, I've been getting popped so much lately. Because scriptures that stand out to me is don't answer foolish questions, because they become quarrelsome. Don't answer a fool, or at least you become like one. Since my young lion that pulled me into this rumble room thing, I find myself getting out of character quite often, and I see that when I get into that dialogue and disrespecting one another and this and that, I start feeling like a fool, because then I say, wow, that scripture is deep. You entertaining these fools and you becoming just like them, a fool. So I got to slam the door and run out and be like, wow. I'm telling you something. That real up, very real, very, very real. So Baraka, I can learn a lot from that. Thank you for sharing.
So when we think about the spirit, we think about the Ruach HaKodesh. I always talk about this. I always bring this scripture up in Romans chapter 8:14, I think. I think it's 14. For as many as are led by the Spirit of Elohim, they are the sons of Elohim. It's imperative. Oh, well, if you don't, if I closed it too quick. Romans, that was Romans. Spirit raises mortal, live. Romans 8 and 9, but you are not in the flesh, but in the spirit, if so be that the Spirit of Elohim dwell in you. Now, if any man have not the Spirit of Messiah, he is none of his. Right. If you don't have the Ruach, you're none of his.
Right.
Period. Right. You're just not, right. You're none of his.
Right.
But for as many as are led by the Spirit of Elohim, they are the sons of Elohim. It don't do you no good to have the Ruach in you and you're not walking in the Ruach.
You can't come the God way unless you have him.
Right.
Right. You only come because you got called. Right? But you could be called and then you could even have the Ruach in you. But if you're not walking in the Ruach, it's no good. It's no good at all. But this is where we at. So there's a connection between the spirit and your conscience and your mind.
Right.
Where that fear is kicking in. Right? When that Ruach is talking to you and showing you, wait, you need to be going right. You need to be moving to the right. And that fear is going to agree with that Ruach. And you say, okay, yeah, up to the right. Right? If you don't have that fear, you're going to hear that thing and then you're just going to be like, let me just see what left is like.
Right. Let me check out left. It's going to be questionable. If you don't have that fear, you got to think of it like how when you have respect for your appearance and stuff, but you still do what you want to do. You're supposed to have like fear to where regardless of what, you're not going to do it no matter what. Like you're going to do what it has to be.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I want the teacher to explain, because I've been waiting in the cut. Would you explain about Abraham next couple of chapters when he got a little shame?
Oh, well,
say it again.
Okay, we definitely going to talk about those. We definitely going to talk about all of those things. I don't think we had time to. We can't. We can't get there too. I know we can't. We can't.
See, when we get there, that's going to explain the reason why
we can't
Israel went in captivity in Egypt. It don't say it in detail.
We can't.
We use the word down. It's not in there, but you got to say it.
Yeah. I think what we gain from what we see here is the fact that, again, it doesn't take much to get you to the place to really have that saving faith. You just got faith that's as small as a mustard seed, right? It don't take much. Again, he knew how to worship the Most High and call on his name. And that was enough to get him up out of, in the midst of that wickedness, being able to trust in the Most High and hear and hear from him and go and do. Faith is about hearing from the Father and doing it. And not having all of the answers, just knowing that he wants you to go down the street, make 2 lefts and a right. You don't know where you're going, but you know that he wants you to move. So you move. Faith is about go over there and talk to that person. What I'm gonna talk to them about. Now you stepped out right there. Because you hear it, go over and talk to that person. Just go and talk to the person. Then what's gonna happen is what's gonna happen. Faith is about hearing and moving, not trying to figure out A, B, C, D. Just go.
Just go.
Just faith is about hearing and going and doing. Now we'll see later on how things get more complex. Because the thing about it is the thing about faith. It's interesting that it's described as a seed,
Right.
but the thing's gonna grow. But the thing that got you in the door don't keep you in it. Don't keep you in the room.
Right.
It got you in the door, but it don't keep you in the room. There got to be progression and growth. So we'll get into that, all of that. But I'm saying, as far as here, when we seeing what happened with Avram, just that little bit, just those two little things. There be some other things that we don't know about, but those two little things that we're able to look and visibly see was all that he needed to move forward, and then for him to be the father of the faith. That's all he had to do. Just worship the Father and call on his name. And he got this covenant that lasts even until this day. Till this day.
Till this day.
Even though he did what he did, in Hebrews, they still name him the Father.
Right. Yeah. Well, what you mean, even though he did what he did?
Well, there's a couple parts in there. He was a little shady.
Oh, yeah.
But that didn't count against him.
Yeah. No, it didn't.
Always.
Well, I guess let's see. We can let's see. What time is it? I don't want to talk too long.
All shady.
Yeah, but think about as far as Abraham's concerned in the faith, though, because we had to think about the idea of progression.
And we can't use that as like, oh, he's moving, because what that do is going to start staggering your growth. Like if you have the mindset that, oh, no one's perfect, that was my mindset. I mean, when you have that mindset, like, oh, everybody's human, or like it'll stagger you because it's like you're telling your phone, I know that it's okay to make a mistake. Yes, it's okay, but you should always be. You should have a fear to where at no point you're trying not to never make a mistake. Regardless, though, that you can't. We're not perfect, though. That's
but I think there's a balance, though, because we are able to look and see how he was a human being. But I think what we have to understand is that there has to be, if you think about anything, human, plant, whatever, if it just stays the way that it always is, you take that plant and you throw it in the garbage. If it don't grow, if we sit up here and look at, there's a place that we have for people who can't grow, who stay the same. Like they have to be put in a special place and have special attention. We need to have growth. You have to have growth, and so I'm saying the balance is that yes, we understand that it's you're human, but what we do though is like what you talked about how you went to Catholicism when you wanted that thing that was less stringent. Yeah. When we think about it like that, when we say, well, nobody's perfect, everybody falls, that gives you an excuse to not be perfect. Meanwhile, Yeshua said what? That's what he said. What'd he say?
He ain't perfect, because I am perfect.
He didn't call for you to be imperfect. Even though he might have known that you won't be. But what he said was, be you therefore perfect. Yeah. So we gotta, and we get back to the fear again. And that fear is keeping you on that path of perfection.
Yeah. So what do you call the step?
I call it being human. But if he never would have progressed, though, that's where the problem is. We saw his progression. Right. We saw how his faith grew. And it turned into something else, even though he did do the same thing 2 times. But we see a progression where he got to that pinnacle and he made it.
Right. Because there was a test of faith. There was even a test of faith with him and Sarah.
But I don't want to go too much because we didn't get that far.
Oh, we didn't get there.
No, we didn't even get there.
I can't wait till we get there.
So,
somebody else did the same thing you did too.
Yeah.
Like a trait. But I'm still looking at
Adam already did that himself.
What was you gonna say, Chris? Hold on, talk up, son.
I wanted to say, as far as the growth situation,
Yeah.
that Yeshua said that if you are not like one of these little children,
Yeah,
you will no way inherit the kingdom.
yeah,
Right.
From a child, the child is ever learning and
Yeah.
growing.
Right.
you
know,
saying
so
something like that.
We have to be continually
Yeah.
growing and learning from the Most High,
Yeah.
and not get to that point where we think we know everything.
Yeah.
Always,
Right. Right. I mean, can we say retarded? Can we say that?
Mentally challenged? Say no, mentally.
I'm saying, but if your growth is not, if you're not growing, then your growth is retarded, right? It's stopped. There's a stoppage. It's not growing. That's a sickness. There's a problem. There's something wrong if you're not growing, if you're not progressing. We have to. We can't be stagnant. We can't be stagnant. If there stagnicity. I don't.
You can make, hey,
you can make your own.
if Merriam-Webster can do it, you can do it. Just give it a bona fide meaning.
If you got stagnicity, then
Stagnicity.
you need to work on some things so that you can move forward.
Right.
Especially if you're able to recognize it.
Right.
That's the problem with a lot of us today. If you're able to recognize your problems, then you don't got no business with them problems. It's one thing if you can't see your own problems. That's one thing. But if I'm able to diagnose myself and then I still got them problems, that's just wicked. That's just wickedness right there. That's just rebellion. If I know it's different if I don't know what my problem is. But if I know what it is and I'm there, but I'm just human. We all human. Yeah. That's that wickedness that we need to get out.
It's like we just want to get it down to the smallest level though. If you got some people who are so big, like I said, they can't even see it.
Yeah.
You know, and then you got the root and the spirit got to grow in you. It's giving you the strength to fight it, to minimize it, and that's becoming that perfect. Because the more you fight it, the more perfect you become. Okay, you knock one obstacle down, I'll move to the next one, then to the next one.
But sometimes you get born that you will remove.
But it's still about the fight though. Right. It's still about the fight. Even if that thorn is still gonna be there, it's still about the fight. You never get to the place where you get don't let the thorn get comfortable. It always got to be a fight, a progression moving forward. Even if it's that thing that don't never go away.
That verse says, Paul asked for that thorn to be versus Christian.
Yeah.
And I look at it, in my own life, that he's using it for growth. But when I think about Abram, the strength and the growth he had, is what God tested with his son. Me personally, I don't think, wait a minute, I just got it. Now you want me to sacrifice, and I think that was growth for him.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was, and we're gonna close it down on this note. But just thinking about the fact that we can't look at the patriarchs and think that's gonna be our situation necessarily. We can easily look and be like, oh, there ain't no way I could have did nothing like that. But what we have to understand is the Most High. The thing about the Most High that we have that's such a wonderful thing is that we have a life and a relationship that's specific to our own selves. We have our own things that we're going through. It might not be this, but it's something. But the thing that's constant, that's true, whoever it is, the fact that the Most High is there with us to be able to go through the thing with us and carry us through any situation. And he's able to get us through any situation when we trust in him. When we put our trust in him and keep him in the place that he belongs, which is above everything. He's the Elohim of the heavens above and of the earth, and there's none beside him. That means your little situation ain't beside him, right? He's up there and he's over everything. He understands your situation better than anybody understands it. If we only just trust in him and allow him to actually be who he literally is, the creator and sustainer of everything.
I believe that.
Right.
I would put on that 89
Hmm.
and that's what I,
Yeah.
you know.
But that's true. What you're saying. As long as we understand that you don't necessarily know what you can bear, because you can sit up there, he can sit up there and say, "Go over there to that place right there," and you say, "Well, that can't be him because I know he wouldn't send me over to that place."
Right.
He knows that I couldn't bear that, so that must be my carnal mind telling me that.
Hey, you want me to tell you what gave me some fear, Tony? And I said this a couple, like about last month in Shabbat. When I read that verse in the Hebrew Yonathan, when it says, when you willfully sin, you continue to willfully sin, there is no sacrifice
Yeah, Hebrews
for your
10.
sin, for your transgression. So that kills all that. Once you save, all you said, once you're saved, you're always saved. All you have to do is accept Jesus. But guess what he said? Yeshua said, not Jesus, Yeshua said, if you love me, then keep my commandments. He never said, just believe in me and you can never go to hell. He never said that. Churchianity says that.
And when we think about Hebrews chapter 10, I think it's 26, where it says that in terms of willfully sinning, it speaks to genuine faith.
Yeah, genuine faith.
When I know who he is,
Right.
I'm not turning around.
That's like Paul, when he was, after his transition, he didn't go back.
Right.
He went through the most, and he did not.
Right.
There ain't no turning back.
Right.
There ain't no
He
turning
didn't
back.
turn all the way back. He didn't turn back, but he did talk about struggling with sin.
Well, yeah, you can fall down,
Yeah, but you can get back up.
but you got to get up.
You got to get up.
It ain't
You got to
about
get up.
don't have to. You got to get
So
up.
if you stay down there, you willfully sinning.
That don't have to, it's like it's your option. Like,
Yeah, I don't have to, but I could though.
Right.
Yeah, I could. But I
You
don't
better
have to.
get up.
But I'm
And you
good
better
because-
run.
I'm good because Jesus loved me, and I'm going to heaven because I believe in him.
And I had that too with you, that exact same thing, and I studied with this person for 4 years. But I always had like a little question mark up there.
Bing.
Hey, Mike.
So that light came on her.
I can't, you know, and it was some things that I just didn't swallow.
Right.
It's good.
Right.
Okay, so that being said, we'll get back to Avram and his story, y'all willing. Next week we'll get more into his situation, talk about a couple other things, and we for now we'll say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Enjoy the rest of your Shabbat, and we are